Keyshawn,
Yes, that is me.
do you agree with Saquon that his Eagles team is one of the best of all time?
I agree with him in his own mind. I mean, that's coming out of his mind. But in all honesty, buddy, and buddy to him, not to you, nah, not quite. I mean, I understand that they won the Super Bowl and he had, the 2,000 yards and he was getting ready to break the record and all of those sort of things. So they set him down. But no. They're not one of the top 5 teams in the history of the National Football League, let alone the Miami. That's the Miami Dolphins undefeated, right? So you got to clearly say that they are the number 1 team ever in the history of the league because they're the only ones that go wire from wire and do it all. But then when you just start breaking down the 85 Bears and then Pittsburgh Steelers of the 70s, and then you come into this era of when I was playing and you start looking at the Baltimore Ravens, the Dallas Cowboys, the San Francisco 49ers, and Lord, please, don't tell me about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Saquon Barkley had 7 yards against our defense.
He needs some
I'm
milk.
going to keep it a buck.
Under center. Deuce Staley. Touchdown, Philadelphia.
It can go viral. You can say whatever you want to say. Saquon Barkley would have had a rough day, and I love him as a running back. Love him to death against that defense with Derrick Brooks and company. Okay? Regardless to what the record looks like.
Who was and company?
Excuse me?
Who was and company? He needs some milk.
But wait, there's more.
Who else was on the defense?
I'm just trying to say, I'm trying to think. Simeon Rice, future Hall of Famer, just got getting ready to get inducted to the Ring of Honor.
Sapp,
Booger, Brooks, Barber, Kelly, Jackson, Dexter Jack. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Just Johnny Lynch, just on that defensive side alone.
Hey, what do you hear? What do you say? Before I get into where the Eagles actually stand as a top team ever, before I address that, I got to address this comment by Keyshawn Johnson, who, I'll be honest, as an analyst, I think he's very level-headed. He's reasonable. He's not emotional when he talks. And I think he's less biased than a lot of other analysts out there. But he did falter in this comment, saying that Saquon Barkley would only have 7 yards against his Tampa Bay Bucks that won the Super Bowl. And I can tell you that is a bunch of BS. Saquon Barkley would have destroyed that team, and I could prove it to you. First of all, that Tampa Bay Bucks team, it was a good team, but it wasn't an all-time great team, not even close. In fact, they should have lost to the Eagles in the NFC East championship game, in which they won 27-10, as you see on the screen. Now, the thing is in this game, Andy Reid happened. If you watch this game, if you go back and watch this game, the Eagles came out with a bang and they go up 7-0. And how did they do that? Well, they got a good kickoff return by Brian Mitchell, but then they just pounded the ball. They came out running the ball, and Deuce Staley tore that defense up. He went right in for a touchdown to start the game. Now look, the problem was in this game for the Eagles is Andy Reid happened. He just abandoned the run game, and you kind of seen him do that this year in the Super Bowl. But when he was the Eagles head coach, he did it way more often. And to me, one of the reasons the Eagles never won the Super Bowl, one of the reasons was Andy Reid. And I think sometimes Patrick Mahomes bails Andy Reid out because he's so great. He's such a great quarterback. But Deuce Staley averaged, he only ran the ball 13 times, 58 yards, and he had that touchdown. He had that long 20-yard run. And really, he was averaging what, 4.5 yards a carry, something like that. And every time he got the ball, he was making plays happen. And the Eagles, if you look at this team, look at the receivers: Todd Pinkston, or as we call Todd Stinkston, James Thrash, who we call James Trash. Chad Lewis, receiver, Antonio Freeman. The Eagles' offense, Freddie Mitchell. Dude, this was the worst receiving core we've ever had. Let's just be honest. And Andy Reid just kept throwing it. Look at this. Donovan Knapp, 49 attempts at throwing the ball, playing right into Tampa Bay's arms. Look at this. He had a 58.5 rating. I mean, it was so obvious in this game that they needed to run the ball. And when the first drive, that's exactly what they did. They ran the ball and they scored a touchdown. And here we are as Eagles fans thinking, yeah, we're going to beat this team again, because we had beaten them, I believe, the prior 2 seasons in the playoffs. But Andy Reid happened, and he decided he wanted to beat the team passing the ball. And when Andy Reid gets in that mindset, I've seen him lose many, many playoff games with that mindset. This Eagles team should have beat that Tampa Bay team. And this Eagles team is not even close to as good as the current Super Bowl championship Eagles. Saquon Barkley. If Deuce Staley could average 4.5 yards a carry against that defense, just imagine what Saquon Barkley would have done with a better offensive line, a better quarterback, better receivers. They would have crushed that Tampa Bay team. I'm telling you, our defense would have crushed that Tampa Bay offense too. It wasn't that good. Brad Johnson as their quarterback. Give me a break. I do like Mike Allstat. He was a good player. Keyshawn Johnson, solid receiver. But, man, there was no – come on, man. I mean, there was nobody that great on that offense. It wasn't some great offense. It was well coached. John Gruden was a good coach. But bottom line, guys, Deuce Staley tore that defense up when he got the ball. The problem was Andy Reid completely abandoned the run after that first drive. And that's one of the reasons he always drove me crazy when he was the Eagles head coach. And he still has that weakness, but I think he has learned from that a little bit more with Kansas City. But bottom line, Keyshawn Johnson, don't talk crap. You guys beat the Oakland Raiders with Brad Johnson. Not Brad Johnson, Rich Gannon as the quarterback. It wasn't some great Oakland Raiders team. In fact, that was a team John Gruden had built before he was traded to you guys. So it wasn't some great team they beat. The Tampa Bay Bucks, that wasn't some great all-time team. This Eagles team would have destroyed them. They would have demolished them, just like they did the Washington Commanders. Trust me. They couldn't stop Saquon Barkley because they couldn't even stop Deuce Staley. The only thing that stopped Deuce Staley that game was Andy Reid. Now let's move on to why Saquon Barkley is right about the Eagles being an all-time great team.
Fine. Like, who is Jalen Hurts going to be when it's all said and done? Who is A.J. Brown going to be when it's all? Are these going to be future Hall of Famers? And then when you talk about historical teams, you have to have some historical numbers on your side. Is this an all-time defense? Is this an all-time offense? Did y'all break any records? Like, when you start talking all-time, you got to have something for the history books.
All right, guys. So as I listen to this conversation, actually, I usually like this show. I usually think they do a much better job. But none of them really had any stats that backed Saquon Barkley's comments up, or that even just told the story of what the 2024 Super Bowl championship Eagles were. First of all, this was a team that broke many records. This team made history. First of all, they recorded the most points scored in one postseason at 145 points. The most points scored in a conference championship game at 55. They're the only team in Super Bowl history to beat a two-time defending world championship. And they're the only team in Super Bowl history to beat two teams looking for the repeat championship. Okay? They have the tied for the most wins ever in a season at 18. And the other teams that got that, I believe, were the 1985 Bears, one of the great teams of all time, 1984 San Francisco 49ers, and 2007 New England Patriots, I believe, who lost the Super Bowl. But that is one of the best teams ever, even though they lost. Eagles won 16 out of the last 17 games. The only game they lost was a game against Washington, which Jalen Hurts got hurt. Most rushing yards ever in a season. We know that. Okay, so they had a plus 68 point differential in the playoffs, which is the best we've seen since 2002. Plus 50 point differential in the NFC Championship game and Super Bowl combined, which was the best we've seen since 2000 in 25 years. Okay? Plus 12 turnover differential in the playoffs, which is the second best ever. The only team since the 1970 merger to have a rushing champ along with the best defense, tying the 1992 Cowboys. So what is this? This is greatness. This is a team that has see, what happens is there's you know how people say there's a recency bias, but the teams that coming off the championship game tend to be underrated because teams that win a Super Bowl, as that Super Bowl ages and years go by, their legend, their memories and everything, they start to go up and, oh yeah, this is a great team now. 20 years later, it's a great team. But coming off the Super Bowl, yeah, it's just a Super Bowl champ. So that will get better as years go by. So bottom line, guys, this team was a special team. This is one of the best teams I've ever seen. I think you could put them up there with the 1992 Cowboys, the 85 Bears, all of them. Why? Because you had the best rushing attack. You have two elite wide receivers, a top 10 tight end, one of the best offensive lines I've ever seen, the number one rated defense that gets great turnovers, great coaching staff. The Eagles had no weakness. If you just go down the line of what they accomplished, their strengths at each position, to me, it's a no-brainer. They didn't beat some chumps in the Super Bowl. They beat a team that, had they won that Super Bowl, would have been called the best team ever. So remember that. They didn't just beat that team. They destroyed that team, and they were winning that game 34-0. 34-0 against the two-time defending champs. This is one of the best teams ever. I'm not going to rank them. I'm just telling you, I would put this team up against any team in history based on their strength, based on how balanced they are throughout that lineup. This team is as good as a team as you're going to see. That's all I got, guys. Let me know what you think down below, and we'll talk later.
Cause that's the bottom line. Cause Stone Cold said so.